Shalom, shalom. This video is about the Gospel of John chapter 6 verse 1 to 16, and specifically Andrew's prayer regarding his prayer preceding the first multiplication of bread. The text reads, afterwards, that's almost a year later, Yeshua went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. So he traveled from Capernaum in the northwest of the Galilee to the southwest, and the text says also known as the Sea of Tiberias. A large crowd kept following him because they were watching the signs he was performing on the sick. Then Yeshua went up to the mountainside and sat down there with his disciples. Passover, the Jewish feast, was near. And remember what I explained before, that whoever translated the Hebrew text of the Gospel of John into Greek was a strong anti-Semite, and that's why he diminished the Adonai's Moedim, the Passover, diminished to a Jewish feast. And this sinful act that crept into the Gospel of John actually led the Christian church eventually to completely disregard Adonai's Moedim, and instead of godly Passover, to celebrate a horrible feast complete with eggs and with bunny rabbits as to a fertility goddess called Ishtar, true pagan festival, instead of the godly Passover. Okay, it was the Passover was near. Lifting up his eyes and seeing the large crowd coming to him, Yeshua said to Philip, "Where will we buy bread so that these may eat?" Now Yeshua was saying this to test him because he knew what he was about to do. And Philip answered him, 200 denarii isn't enough to buy bread for each and for each to get a little bit. One of his disciples, Andrew, that Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what is that for so many?" Yeshua said, "Make the people recline." There was much grass in the area, so the men reclined, and there was about 5,000 of them in number. Then Yeshua picked up the loaves, and having given thanks, that is the bracha, he distributed bread to everyone who was reclining. He did the same with the fish, as much as they wanted. Then, when the people were full, Yeshua said to his disciples, "Gather up the leftovers so nothing is wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with broken pieces from the 5 barley loaves, which were left over by those who had finished eating. When the people saw the sign that Yeshua performed, they began to say, "This is most certainly the prophet who is to come into the world." Realizing that they were about to come and seize him by force to make him king, Yeshua withdrew again to the mountain, himself alone. Andrew's prayer was practical. There's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what is that for so many? In the previous prayer study, I mentioned that the boy's barley loaves were very early bikurim, or first fruits, which are usually offered on the 8th day of the Passover festival train. It is the first day after the Feast of Unleavened Bread at the end of Passover. I made the point that the purpose of the first fruit offering is to multiply the harvest, and that was exactly what happened when his first 5 loaves were multiplied to feed the 5,000. And of course 5, he reaches fullness tenfold into 50, which reaches its fullness ultimately in 5,000. As Yeshua turns leanness into abundance, he is one with El Shaddai and Adonai Yireh, as these titles belongs to him. He blesses and multiplies until our cup overflows, as King David testified. The multiplication of these 5 barley loaves fits very well with that. He is the God who provided manna for Israel in the wilderness during the Exodus, As the bread of life, He provides the spiritual food that we all crave. Bread is from a kernel of grain that falls into the ground and dies, and then sprouts new life, grows up and bears much fruit, 40 and 60 and 80-fold, even 100-fold multiplication. Multiplication is what God does best. It is the testimony of every kernel of grain. Bread is from the earth, as Adam was made from the earth as well. Mankind is from the earth. The bread we eat is from the earth. When we die, our bodies return to the earth. Our beginning and our end, our entire physical being is dirt, is from the earth. As Ben Adam, the second Adam, Yeshua's earthly body was earth, and his life here, like our earthly lives too, was like the testimony of every kernel of grain. Yes, humanity also multiplies through our seed, and we multiplied and filled the earth as we were commanded to do in Genesis 1 verse 28. Fish is a biblical metaphor for multiplication, like grain is. Dark fish in Hebrew is called dark, spelled Dalet Gimel, with Dalet being the door and Gimel a walking man. The walking man enters through the Dalet door, and Yeshua is the door into the richness and the fullness of life. Both bread and fish testifies about God's multiplication. In the previous prayer study, in considering Philip's prayer, we touch on the meaning of the number 2. Now, let's contemplate the meaning of number 5. 5 in Hebrew is the letter Hay. Hay means behold, as a testimony in the Paleo. Hay represents a man with his arms raised in worship. Hay also represents an uterus, a womb, a secret place from which new life springs forth. Hay therefore testifies about multiplication. Andrew asked, what is 5 barley loaves and 2 fish for so many? Yeshua showed him that every element of the boy's offering is about multiplication. It all testifies how God works in the lives of those who love Him. And I hope this will enrich your reading of the scripture a little bit. Shalom, shalom.